So first off, gentlemen, it's good to see y'all. Really good to see y'all. I know we met last week, but we wanna open up this conversation today. First off, just quick check in, man. How y'all feeling? How y'all doing before we get into this convo?
Man, kids winning this morning with me.
The kids are winning.
Kids winning, bro. It's been a morning. It's been a day already this morning. I'm gonna just say that. I got to dip in a little bit. Accident.
Come on, man. How you gonna dip when you don't even bring the chips?
Man, I got a call this morning, like,
because when you dip, we dip.
I was ready to go. I had to switch everything, man. Just pray for my baby girl, my oldest.
It's all good, man. It's a definite. I had it's been a rough like 2 weeks for me. You know what I mean? Like and then my mom had a health scare Saturday night, and it put me in a really defensive posture, especially because she's a cancer survivor. So it really, you know what I mean? Like it take you mentally to a place that when you're talking about heart problems, like, you know what I mean? It take you to a certain place, but I'm better now. She's better. She's at home. There's no blockages of the heart. I told X, I said, listen, if she thinks she go kick the bucket before I drop this mixtape, then she got another thing coming, okay? Because, like, listen, if he could drop flutes, I'm about to drum or something. I'm going to get y'all, listen. Hey, if he can outsell every rapper with a flute, it's over. I'm about to tambourine you motherfuckers to death, okay? I promise you that. But other than that, man, I'm good, man. I'm happy to be with you wonderful black guys, man. And this is what the streets been waiting on, man. So, I mean, who are we not to give them this sauce? You know what I'm saying? Like, I'm just saying.
I'm feeling okay. I'm feeling okay. I'm working half time with a full time docket. I'm home half the time right now until January, and I it's hard for me to look at everything and say, like, I'm just gonna do half of this stuff right now, because you got people on payroll and you have an important mission to attack. So I all of the problems I have are problems that I've asked for. So I'm doing okay.
Yeah, it's good. It's good to see. It's good to see baby girl too.
Yeah, always.
Do I gotta take Bryson out of school just to like get the parenting points in this motherfucker? Like,
you do.
I'm just saying. Okay,
you do. We've never seen you.
I'm gonna be like, get your ass in here. Look at him.
Only time I see Bryson when he in the back seat, you cussing at me on FaceTime. That's it. That's the only time I ever see him.
That's the only time, everybody.
That's the truth.
At least I know you driving safe with the child. That's gonna be the most.
Hey, don't put that.
That's
Don't
gonna be
put
the
that
most cussingest 5-year-old ever, boy.
Hey, listen. Do not put that. You know what? Put it in my obituary. I'll take that one.
You put the bitch in obituary.
Yeah. Hey, you know what? I knew what type of time you was on when you said Jamal's mouth was dry. I said at that point,
he was ready.
Listen, I knew what was up.
Out of nowhere.
No, because look, I want all the viewers to know. Go to Jamal's page. Jamal, see, here's the thing about Jamal, man. Jamal is like low-key genius.
Yo.
Jamal is one of the most incredible articulators. He's so articulate. He's one of the most incredible articulators of intersectional social justice theory applied in an everyday way. Like, the dude is just like, bro, you are next level with it in the ability to just communicate it concisely but still comprehensively.
Boy.
However, it's always something going on with your hairline. There's always something going on with your chapped lips. So I put the Ashy Larry joint in the chat because I was like, bruh, it's like Ashy Larry PhD over here.
I am a respected man. All right?
I'm not saying you're not respected. I'm saying your lips is disrespected. And on behalf of the black delegation, it's disrespectful.
Oh my goodness. Hilarious.
Yeah, man, get that baby powder. Roll them 77.7s. So let's jump into it, man. First thing I just want to say is I spent a lot of time thinking about this topic because I think it's it's a challenging topic to get into. So first, I just want to say a couple things. One, once again, we will say this: to have a conversation that is specific is not to exclude the things we are not talking about. It is simply to focus on what we are talking about. One of the challenges of talking with the Unsaid in general, this whole conversation, this whole idea of having 4 Black men have a conversation can be seen as uninclusive. And so I want to just acknowledge that, while also saying it's important in this world for people to hear specifically from Black men about what's on our heart and what we feeling and what's going on. That said, I'm gonna point out some of the intersectional points, but I do want you fellas to really focus on how this issue, how this idea, and how this reality we're living in right now is specifically affecting you and what you think about it. So the Israel-Hamas war started long ago, but in many people's minds, it started on October 7th when Hamas began to launch rockets into Israel. So as y'all know, I was there in Israel when they started to launch those rockets. And one of the things I talked about in the previous Unsaid was the ways in which masculinity showed up on my trip while I was mostly in the West Bank over there in Palestine. And the ways in which, because of the people I was traveling with, I didn't feel my masculinity in the same ways that I feel it in America. I didn't feel the insistence that I perform certain things. And it was this interesting feeling that I had. And then I got back to the US, and the first time I went to a restaurant and the bill came, I immediately was reminded of my performance responsibilities, right? Like I had that feeling, and I was like, oh man, I haven't felt this in 2 weeks. Like, 'cause I was out there in the West Bank for 2 weeks. Now, I'd say that as context, it's been nearly 2 months. The Israel-Hamas war is now at a point where there are hostages being released. There's a ceasefire that we're currently under. We've been fighting and posting and calling for this ceasefire for some time. Earlier this week, I sent all of y'all a text, and I was like, y'all see what I'm seeing? Because of all the hostages, and over 100 have been released. Palestinian prisoners are being released in Israel. As a reminder, Israel is currently holding nearly 5,000 Palestinians incarcerated, with nearly 1,200 of them under the age of 18, as well as having the vast majority of them being Palestinian men. In the West Bank, roughly 40% of Palestinian men have been incarcerated at some point in their lives. You can be tried in a military court after the age of 12. This is some of the rest. So when we're thinking about carceral states and carceral systems, this is just context around Israel. At the same time, that's the West Bank and in Israel proper, like Tel Aviv and such. At the same time, you know, Hamas took 240 hostages on October 7th. Most of them Israeli. Some of them were you know, from other countries. They're Americans, they were Europeans, etc. Now we're at the point where the world has been, in many ways, calling for a ceasefire. And I don't want this whole conversation to focus on the Israel-Hamas war, because this is actually bigger than this. Because there's a war going on in Sudan right now. There's wars going on all across the world, and we see this pattern happen. And I want to talk about this pattern and what y'all think about it. Of all the hostages that have been released, of all the prisoners that have been released from Israeli jails, none have been men our age. They have been women and minors. I believe there was one elderly man who was released, but I just want to I want for us to publicly wonder, without scrutiny, and certainly without neglecting the realities of the ways in which war visits violence specifically on women, because sexual violence is very real. And women are seen as often a prize. Their bodies are seen as a prize. And men's bodies are seen as expendable in a different way. And it's not to negate the realities of the harms that women face, but I do want to focus on, gentlemen, as men, this idea of being a protector and being a front line, of being the first to run in, being expected to run in. Knock, knock, somebody's at your door, 2 o'clock in the morning, you better get up, get down and check that out, sort of a thing. Or you're on a homestead, you're out like I do. I go out in the cabin, out in the country a lot, and you're expected to know how to protect yourself, something come up. Right? And it's not to say that no one can protect themselves, but what we're talking about today is the question of the expectation of performance based off of gender, related to the question of securing a space. And when it comes to this question around hostages, the question of expendability in this manner, the expendability, I will just say first, it really does feel that when it comes to war and violence, and whether that's in North London, where I grew up, where men have been getting shot and killed and dropping dead for years and years, or whether it's in the West Bank, or whether it's in Israel, and watching waves and waves of people being released, and to know that when I read into it, that men weren't even included in the negotiation between the U.S. and Israel and Hamas. They weren't even included in the negotiation. Like, it wasn't even a part of the conversation. So it's just, I think we need to talk about it. So first off, y'all, I said a lot. Who wants to jump in? How are you feeling about this idea? And then let's talk about the why we feel it may be there.
Well, one of the first thoughts I had when you sent the message the other day was just, I started to reflect on the way, we frame things and the way I frame things as a social media creator. And oftentimes, like, just trying to like really um, investigate why we do things the way we do and why I have as well. Because when we're trying to wrap out sympathy, if there's, let's just say 1,000 casualties, we might say, uh, 500 women and children. We negate that man died too, regardless of their age. And again, I'm reflecting on it myself too, because I participated in that. And it often seems as though, like, men inherently are either deserving of violence or are expected to be able to respond to it. The violence that happens to them is okay. Because even when we say children, we don't distinguish between gender. So we're saying up to a certain age.
Boys have been released. I just want to be clear. Boys have been like young men have been released.
Yeah. So it's like, and it's really not a certain age. It's when you appear to be a man, because like the way we frame, or how like a Mike Brown was viewed, or how a Tamir Rice was viewed, how through a societal lens of, the violence is deserving. And I want to also to, illuminate the fact that you said performance responsibility, which I think was very powerful, and it made me really reflect as well, because when we are in this country, this society, or even really depending on the neighborhood sometimes, or where we are in the country, we do assume that role. And when you're outside the country, you don't see that as much. It kind of makes me think about, there was an artist, not to go too far off base, but like there was an artist in South Africa who said she doesn't view herself as black because in South Africa she's colored. And it made me think about, like, again, it's a social construct. These responsibilities place and these burdens place on people. So my question that I'm thinking out loud is like, what is our role as men in society then? Because even men who are viewed as protectors and men who are viewed as, the ones who are either, deserving of violence or supposed to stand up for people, like, they don't always feel comfortable doing it. Like before I got on the call, it's real funny. Before I got on the call, we got a treadmill. I'm taking the treadmill downstairs. I hear something downstairs, right? So you already know. Like I'm like, it don't sound like it don't sound like it. I mean, like we got the little basement window thing. So I'm like, did an animal fall in the little thing? But it kept going over and over. So you know me, I'm like, well, I don't know if I'm gonna go down there. But everybody was at the crib. I put the thing, put the treadmill to the side. I slowly tiptoed. There's one of these. But if all my girls, my wife was at the crib, who they calling on, you know what I'm saying? And I'll be telling straight up, like, when y'all call me to get the buzz, I'll be a little scared too. I'm gonna perform though, you know what I'm saying? But I'm gonna do
Why? Why, E? Why?
Because that's the expectation. And not only the expectation, that's how I've been raised. That's how I've been taught by society. And that's the burden that I reluctantly and voluntarily carry up to this point. And I got 4 daughters and a wife. So I was really thinking about that when you said that a lot, because who else?
Who's checking the bump in the night?
Right.
The night.
And I don't always want to. I can't defer.
I never.
You know what I'm saying? Who am I going? I can't do that. So I'm gonna take a step back, because I'm thinking about it heavy. But I do think it is the expectation that in some ways that the violence that's inflicted on us is in some ways not as big of a deal, and in some ways deserved.
Can I just do one follow-up question on you, E, before Jamal, I saw you want to hop in. But E, do you find any joy or honor or identity in that expectation? Like that bump in the night, like you were like, I'm scared, I don't want to go down there. But like I'm wondering, because yes, there's duty. yes, there's obligation, but I'm also curious, do you feel any honor or joy or like, nah, this, I do this because it's my, these my daughters, this my wife.
Yeah,
Like, do you
yeah.
have any?
I feel good knowing that like they, you know, I mean, I would do anything for my kids, my wife, you know. So I do feel like good in that sense, but at the same time, I do feel that it's sometimes like an unfair burden on me, you know, because again, like I grapple with a lot. And I'll joke about it a lot, but I am not like that dude. I'm not the fix it guy. I'm not the I'm not that dude. I'll call somebody in a second. I'm not the guy that's about to your car broke down. Oh, I'm gonna go get my tools. I'm gonna go. Oh, bro, like we gonna call. I'll change the tires. I'm gonna change the tire. Oh, I got that one. You know what I'm saying? Shout out to me for that.
Yeah.
But otherwise, it, I don't think it. I don't gain like I don't feel better because of that. It doesn't feel my tank. But I do know that in my position that it's the thing I feel like I should do.
I think it calls into sharp relief the way that our patriarchal standards harm everybody, including men. You know, we are harmed by our systems and our ways of thinking as well. There are particular gendered burdens that we all carry. You know, I think about, you know, who checks a bump in the night, and that's going to be me. And I think, I also think about my wife who's given birth to my two children. And the literal risk to her life that requires in order to bring children into the world. And for some women, it's an absolute expectation and not necessarily always a gift to them that they're going and doing this thing. I think there is a difference in how we acknowledge the expectations. Whereas, with childbirth, it's an understood sacrifice, the pain, the danger, the effort that gets put forth to alleviate and support that person, and rightfully so. I think all of that support is deserving and not enough, to be honest. We should be doing more for birthing. I think on the other end, the burden that men carry is often unseen. So, I'm checking exits when we walk into a restaurant. If
Yes.
we are living in a world of mass shootings. I need to know how we're getting in, how we're getting out. I need to see who's coming into this door. There's a burden. And people might think that's illogical, but there are mass shootings all the time. And we don't live in a world where you can't be unprepared for that. When we're walking down the street at night, whose head is going to be on a swivel? Is going to be mine, because people are getting robbed at gunpoint, families getting robbed, and I stay aware of these things, and it takes an emotional toll, and it is a burden on the person that goes completely unacknowledged and unspoken about, and oftentimes it's an unwilling burden that we're taking on because it's the expectation that's placed on us. So I think about the way that our gendered expectations are harming all of us, but the particular way is going unacknowledged with men. With men and our expectation to be protectors and be the first to the door.
D, what's on your mind?
It was funny. It was, what Jamal said about acknowledging it. You know what I mean, and how we respond, and how whether or not we choose to accept it. It's funny because I've had this conversation with my family often, and I never examined why I would make a joke of it, right? So, family would be like, oh man, if something happened, you got us. You know what I mean? They always, and the joke in the family is because I'll say no. You know what I mean? And what I'm starting to realize in real time is that the times I've accepted it has been the times when I'm not treated like it's a requirement. And so, if no one on this planet can tell me to give my body or my life up for anything, you know what I mean? And the idea that that is required to be a man, or that is required for us to lead a family unit, or to even be a member, because that's just like in the door. If there's gunshots, you go the fuck I am. Okay, we gonna wait till that clip empty. You hear me? But I think that I I fought back the last few years as I've grown more comfortable with knowing that I don't have to do something that I don't want to do just to make other people happy or feel safer. because like we're not okay if I feel unsafe. You know what I mean? I'm a military guy. I have to count exits even before I even think of mass shootings. You know what I mean? I cannot sit in a room with my back to the door at all. Like I physically would be uneasy. But this idea of us being that security and all of that in a society in a time where we're not valued. You know what I mean? And when we're the first on the chopping block, it's difficult. You know what I mean? Like it's difficult knowing that I have to be willing to give my life no matter what. If it's 90 other people and I'm the only man, you know what I mean? Not to say that I won't, because what I found in my work now is I'm more accepting because it's not a requirement. And so, if I'm with you all and we're at breakfast, or if I'm with my team and or we're making deliveries, something like that, oh, it's up and stuck. But it's not because, they say, hey, if something happened, you die for me. You know what I mean?
Mm.
But it's more of a, okay, no, I want to make sure that nothing else happens to someone else. You know what I mean? And real quick, and I'll stop talking. But I think it's wild because I was telling somebody I've never had a thought. I never daydreamed about me being an old black man. Never, not one time.
Mm.
I've never had a dream or thought about what it would be like to be 60 or 70 or like being a grandfather. You know what I mean? And when I started examining that, there's so many different things that either require us to put ourselves in front of the bullet, or we're just already, in harm's way by default, that like, I think subconsciously, I don't think I'm going to make it that long.
That's heavy. Can I add something, man? Because y'all went to a place that caused me to reflect, man, and that man. That brings me back to conversations, when you have with students, when you ask them, like, what's your 5, 10 year goals, and the response is being alive or not really thinking about it. And I'm thinking back to I was in San Francisco earlier this year. I met up with a friend, man, and we were sitting at an outdoor joint eating some food, and halfway through the conversation, as a black brother, I brought up the fact that we both were sitting like this towards the entrance the whole time. Like we were talking like this, and we kept looking like the whole time, man. And I think oftentimes too with this, like some of it is instinctive, man, or even like so some of it I feel like is instinctive, and I have like proof in my life, and also too I think sometimes these roles might not be the most comfortable all the time, but sometimes we assume them because that's the best thing for the team to win. Like I feel like in my household I'm the best one to do that. Like I don't always feel comfortable, but I know like I'm the best one based on my experiences and just based on what I want to do to protect my family, I'm gonna do it. I had a situation I never even shared on social media because I think I spent a long time processing it, but it was like a year and a half ago in North Carolina, my oldest daughter's junior Olympic games. Man, we were at North Carolina A&T the first day, and we're in the stand, and it's me, my wife, and my oldest daughter. And be patient with me as I go through this. All of a sudden, we saw a crowd of kids running across the football field, not like track, like not like they were running for track. They were like stampeded, and then you saw a wave of people running to the exit, and the people were yelling like fire, like somebody was shooting, and in that moment, I thought I was in a mass shoot, man. So I grabbed she was, I'm gonna say maybe 9 at the time. I grabbed her, and I got my wife, and I'm like, run. Like it wasn't even really no thought. It was just to get out of there. And people were trampled on. People were falling, and it was just run as far as you can. Don't even think about it. I'm running full speed with this 9-year-old child in my hand, and at the same time, I'm looking like my wife. Like, how can I do both, right? It's my wife, so I'm stopping. I'm making sure my wife is running. And we ran and we ran and we ran until we got so far that we could take a second. And we still didn't know for sure. Because now we're checking the phone. Because you trying to get instant updates, but you don't know, is it a shooter? Is there somebody on campus? Are they gonna be near me? And we come to find out that it was like some people was getting into it under the bleachers around the same time they did the shot, to run a race.
Mm.
And the people in the area thought it was somebody there who had it, and they started screaming about the gun. And people started. We had people on social media talking about it was, a mass shooting. And I just remember, and it was it's still hard to process for me, man, because like it don't matter if it didn't happen because it felt like it did.
Mm.
You know what I'm saying? Like they stopped everything the rest of the day. Everybody had to go back to the hotel. And when you all said that, like that was the instinct, like in that moment. And I didn't feel like, well, I don't feel like doing this today. It was like I gotta protect my family. And if it had something that happens to me, it is what it is. But we gotta get out of here.
Yeah,
And
yeah,
that's
man.
why it's not always compulsory. It's not always something that's forced on us, even though that is the expectation that we have. But I think the requirement is the acknowledgement of the burden that places, the acknowledgement of the toll that can take over time to always be the one that thinks I have to have my head on the swivel. I have to be the one to pick up my family and run. I have to be the one to check on everyone to make sure that they're safe. There's a burden and an emotional toll to that I think we can't just gloss over.
There's also a physiological toll. I mean, the reality of why I think increasingly somatic therapy is significantly important for men, because it taps you into your actual senses. It taps you into understanding that your body is being adjusted and affected by what is happening in your external world. And to be able to go into those spaces and feel those feelings, like E, what you're talking about, like you said, like y'all run, and then you can get to a place where you like can breathe, right? Like I was sharing my boy Alberto yesterday, when I was in Israel, like it's still like I'm still dealing with it, right? Like when we got to the airport and I told y'all like I thought I saw some shooting stars in the sky. We then realized looking at how they were curving that they were rockets coming towards us. And in that moment, you don't have time to try to figure something out. And you're also in an experience like you were in E where you may not have been here before. So you are truly running off of instinct and whatever the accumulated experience of the expectation of your identity and its performance will now activate. So I've been expected to perform in a certain way for years and years and years and years and years and years in a moment of violence or harm. I know that expectation is there. And if I've internalized that, it will activate. If I've not internalized that, and that's why I was like, okay, I got to get all the people off the bus. And I'm on the bus, and I got locked in on the bus, and everybody's gone now, right? And I'm just sitting there looking at these rockets coming over, and I'm like, me? What about me? Right? And when I finally get off, break the emergency exit, get off that thing, get into the bomb shelter, and I get down there. I remember it was the same thing you were talking about, E. I got under the bomb shelter, and I just see all these children crying and elder people screaming and all of this, and I teared up. I teared up for a minute, and I was just like standing there, just like trying not to let it all release, because I'm like, yo, I really felt like we was about to die. But when I get in the bomb shelter, I'm like, yo, this is just a potential coffin. Like if something hits here, it's just the ceiling's gonna come down on us. Like this ain't nothing but, and they gonna be pulling people bodies out the rubble, just like I see on TV. Like that messes with you. But the question of whether you expect that you should be the one to move in the moment, that is the challenge of the burden. Like May 5th, Cinco de Mayo, I was sitting in Pilsen down the street from my crib. I was at Rabanitos. It's a really nice little Mexican restaurant. I took my girl over there for Cinco de Mayo. We sitting outside. Shorty come out the alley, half a block away. Pop, 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 pop. Just shooting straight out the alley. Now, I'm sure y'all have seen some shootings before. You live in Chicago, and we all black. We all black men. Like, we've been around that. But Pilsen is very gentrifying now. And I'm sitting there, and I'm hearing it, like, nobody's. I was like, y'all get down. What's wrong with you? Like, we got to get down, right? So we get down, 5-10 seconds. I immediately pop up because I'm like, okay, I've been here before.
Mm-hmm.
I'm looking for bodies to see if there's bodies. I see somebody laying down in the grass. So I'm like, okay, I got to go check on Buddy. Like, he just out. I don't know if he's sick. I don't know if he's shot. I don't know if he's bleeding out. All I do know is it's a matter of time. If he is hurt, you only got, it's about seconds at that point. So I hop up and I'm like, yo, I'm going over to check. Right? My girl's like, no, don't go. Nobody's getting up. Nobody's moving. And I'm like, nah, I gotta go check on this dude. And of course I'm thinking about, what if the shooter's there? What if the shooter comes back? Now, I know enough about Chicago to know that most of these shooters are cowards. They're straight cowards. Once you hit it, like Dion, you just said, once the clip empty, they gone. They gone. They ain't sticking around for that. It might be dangerous an hour later when the survivor got back to their place and told their homies, and now they come back to the spot. That's when it's gonna be dangerous. But that's just having field vision for the streets.
Yep.
When I go over there and I, Buddy was fine. I come back and I sit down, and this dude came over to me and he was like, man, I just want to say, that was really, really, really cool, really, really good what you did, man. I just want you to know I was gonna do it too, but my girl said I should go over there and all this. And I'm like, bro, you don't even need to do that. Like, you don't need to do that, bro. Like, I'm about to finish these chilaquiles. Like, but the effect of the expectation of activation, it sits with us so much. Like, and the expectation of, like, it made me, when you were talking, it reminded me of like my first girlfriend. Like, we were standing on a street corner waiting for the bus up on the northwest side of Chicago. And, you like teenager, man, you hugged up and all that, you know what I'm saying? Like, you always got to show that you hugged up, you just, like, just to prove to everybody.
Absolutely.
You got PDA is the only way to show that, and even that, as a young man, you're like, I got to prove that I got a girl. Right. Like, at where I'm at now, I'm like, I ain't trying to prove, I ain't got to prove nothing. But at the time, I definitely felt the pressure of, how come you ain't got no girl? How come you're not performing? How come you ain't stacking? How come you ain't doing these things? She turned me around. I'm hugged up, right? She turned me around, right? She's like, could you stand over here? I was like, yeah, whatever. Now my back is to the street. I see a car had pulled up in front of us. And that was right when she said, could you turn over here? Gee, there's a window behind her. I look in the window. I'm thinking this is a romantic moment. I see Buddy pull out a gun pointing straight at my back. I'm like, come on, man. I'm just like, and now I'm in shock. I don't know what to do. I'm like, but I'm just sitting there. I'm like, did you really just do this? But then I had to think to myself, why wouldn't I be the shield? Like, that's the expectation. I never had the conversation with her. She probably doesn't even know this to this day. I ain't talked to her since, like, in years and years and years and years and years. But the reality is, it's those young, 17-year-olds, like those experiences that you have where an expectation that you will be a shield to violence for someone else. Not that you want to, but that you should be. And then that you must be. That's what I wanted. That's why I wanted to bring this up. But I also want to just bring into this point, because we've all talked about these experiences we've had around the expectation of being the shield. I want to insert this other question around expendability and the way it can produce violence. So, as a man, when I noticed this first when I started going out to clubs, right? Y'all know, girls get in free, man, $20.
And I never had the $20, man. Damn.
Them $20.
Never had.
You go to Green Dolphin, it's 40.
Blue Turtle to get my money. I'm tired of this, man. Keep going, man. I'm sorry.
You know what I'm saying? Like, so here's what I noticed about the guys. And this is why I didn't go. I never went to Vegas until this year. I never wanted. I was like, yo, Vegas, those types of areas, they just promote rape culture. And I don't think y'all understand how patriarchy, misogyny, and hypercapitalism are working together, and everybody's playing a role in it that then creates these unsafe sexual environments for women. And I don't want to be a part of it. I also don't want to see it. And I would just see people playing into it. And when you're young, you see this trail of women walking into this nightclub, $5 in their pocket, come out skunk drunk, no cover, no problem, and dudes at the door broke. As I got older and bottle service becomes a thing, these dudes were pissed. By the time they got in, these men were furious. They were furious about the experience they had had and the ways in which their financial performance was expected of them, and the way in which they were laughed at if they didn't do that by women. Now, I'm not saying that to say that this is about clubs. I'm saying that this is about the question of gender performance, where the imbalance is related to an expectation of bodily or this is financial performance. Those men were pissed off, and they acted like that when they got in. They acted like those women owed them something. They acted like they had a right to those women's bodies. And they were not safe men to be around usually, but they were just transacting in the same way and responding. And I'm not saying that I'm apologizing for them for doing this. I don't think it was right. But the reality is, I noticed it from my early 20s. Like, yo, this game is creating an experience that's creating anger, that's creating violence. But it's not just men participating in this. Fast forward to this issue around the hostages. I've heard a lot of guys. I mean, there's this one comedian, he made this joke. There's no such thing as a feminist in a house fire. He's like, there were no feminists on the Titanic. And he's making this joke. It's a comedian making a joke about masculinity and gender equity. And as much as we try to fight for gender equity, there's this challenge of where the expectation of physical, financial, or other types of performance, specifically on men, does create an expectation of submission or domination from women that is not healthy. And I'm wondering, the men around the world, for those of them who are saying, hey, I do believe in gender equity. I don't believe that, you play this role, I play that role. Men should always go get the bump at the door. There's some men who are like, yo, I think that we need to talk about this and share some of this. They may be looking at this situation and being like, yo, over 100 people got released. I think truly, Jamal, Ernest, Dion, Xavier, every last one of us would still be sitting in that hostage situation. We would.
Absolutely.
And our country would not be negotiating for our release. And they would not be writing up that how many men are still hostages? I don't even know. I know there's women and children hostages. And I know that we're going to make sure that they come home. But I'm just saying that even that feeling for some men, it creates incredible anger at what they feel is unjust and unfair.
A thought I had while processing this is, and interject when necessary, how much of that lack of sympathy is because of the societal, okay, backtrack. Violence is mostly perpetuated by men.
Yeah.
Okay.
So how?
Physical. Yeah, physical.
Yeah.
How much of the lack of sympathy is society saying, this is the bed y'all made, get everybody else out, and y'all do this? You see what I'm saying? Like, I'm thinking this through, so I'm not sure if I'm articulating this well. But when you think about like the heads of state, and of course we're not talking about like we know we ain't talking about all men, but we're saying like the heads of state, the ones who are perpetuating violence, the people who are participating in this through the system. This is being perpetuated by men. So when we say women and children, is it because the expectation is that men are going to finish the fight that they start?
I think there's an understanding that we need to gain that patriarchy does not benefit everyone, and it was never intended to. So when we talk about, because there is that language like, men are fighting these wars, men are causing these wars, but there are very few men who benefit from this. There are a handful of men who are sending other men to die.
That's right.
For their own benefit. And I think it's important when we start talking about how the anger that some men feel when they see women and children being released, when they see this daily thing that you mentioned at the club where I'm supposed to perform certain ways that women are not. What we're looking at is incomplete transformation, where we have, there's an emergence of greater equality for women without the reckoning of the full system in a way that it doesn't benefit all men, the way that our system harms men particularly, and we haven't gotten to chip away at the parts of the system that are not beneficial, that are actively harmful to men.
Yeah. I think it's a challenging thing all around. I think the thing that's coming to my mind. Y'all ever heard of the book "They Were Her Property"?
Mm-hmm.
No.
Yeah. So "They Were Her Property" was really groundbreaking. It was a bit. I think it was either in response or a called commodified wounds, and they were talking about how Black women's bodies had been commodified to produce labor children in the times of chattel slavery. And they were specifically focusing on the ways in which Black women have been specifically harmed and their very bodies have been commodified. "They Were Her Property" was about the role that white women specifically played in the chattel slavery economic system, and the ways in which much of our history does not actually expose, explain, or engage the realities of ways in which many of some of the most vile and evil machinations of chattel slavery were happening because of the permissions and the enforcement, specifically of white women, and the ways in which they enjoyed a level of status that where men were buying and trading slaves, they enjoyed the status that they got above the black women, above the black men. They perpetuated those types of things, and they themselves owned property. They themselves owned people. Now, I'm not saying this to talk about white women. I'm saying this to talk about the importance of an inclusion of the reality that much of violence, physical violence, I believe, yes, is perpetuated by men. I don't want to start this conversation to exclude the reality that women experience violence, but I also don't want to engage this conversation in a way that assumes that they don't also perpetuate it. And that's why I brought in that book, They Were Her Property, because it was very groundbreaking in the fact that very few people write about this. Very few people expose this. That famous picture, I remember when Trump got elected, and that black woman's sister with the pink hat, with the little lollipop, and it said 53% of white women voted for Trump, and she just held that, and there was some white women in the back taking pictures of the White House, and it was like this like, can we acknowledge that there's more participation in systems of violence in a genderized way than we are willing to have a conversation about, and not to punch down on an already marginalized population, but to expand with nuance the reality, the complexity of the ways in which violence and harm and expected performances based on gender actually manifest in our society. Jamila just posted in the chat, Women of the Klan is another book. But I say this just to say that the benefit, right, is often shared by people who are not just the arbiters and deciders. Like the general isn't the only one benefiting from a war. And as Jamal said, it's mostly, or one of y'all said, like, is other men dying because another man wanted to act out their ambitions? Like, men are being negatively affected by this. I just want to add in that there's a complexity that we need to understand that women do benefit from, but are also harmed by patriarchy and misogyny and these sorts of things.
And it's those cycles of harm and benefit that can stop us from fully investigating the ways that we're impacted by patriarchy. And it's the mere investigation of how another marginality of benefit and harm that can lead people to be shut off in these conversations because it's uncomfortable to really dig into.
Mm-hmm. Or they don't want to address that very benefit. You know what I mean? I think that, how many times have we been in a place where it's been acceptable to speak about, women benefiting from it? You know what I mean? Where it would even be respected. You know what I mean? Where like you saying that and addressing that as a black man,
you weak, bro.
You
insecure.
Man, you know what I mean?
Play
So
your role.
I think that when we look at it, it's just to that violence part that you talked about, because it really intrigued me, especially the club example. You know what I mean? Because now that I'm kind of out of a lot of dangerous settings, it's only when I go back into them do I realize, like, okay, am I uncomfortable because I don't prescribe to this anymore, or is it because I'm just not here often? And I think that what this dialogue is kind of what it does for me, a lot of times, but especially today, is that it confirms a lot of things that like I think and I feel that I never really get to examine, because getting there is not pretty. You know what I mean? And saying things that, if you're not in a safe space, you know what I mean? Us talking about, this violence that's just expected. It's hey, you gotta die, bro. You know what I mean? To even address it, sitting with you all feels safer, because I feel like we all are aware of so many things at one time. We're aware that we don't have to be there together. We're aware that, it's an honor to be there. Like if someone walked in I damn to think all of us would do the same thing. You know what I mean? But I think that you hit it on the head when like it's not easy to say that. And I've never been in a setting where that was said and it was accepted, or it was just, it was allowed to be. You know what I mean? And I think when we talk about that violence, or this expectation of it, you know what I mean? It's so unpretty, you know what I mean, that, people try to go beyond surface level, but it's that acceptance of the unpretty stuff that allows us to go deeper and to really examine, why something is. I don't like is that you hit it right on the head, man. Like, that benefit, that duality is what makes it so messy. It's what, allows us to continue to be separated and marginalized in that way because, you know, we're not benefiting from it at all. But that does not mean that there is not a benefit for every other party involved. So yeah.
I think there's a healthy, when we talk about the difficulty of the conversation itself, I think there's a healthy skepticism for men who want to talk about basically how hard men have it, because the way this conversation can go can often be hateful towards women. I think that's why it's important that we have this conversation with each other because we want to dismantle the systems and structures that are harmful to women as well. We just don't want ourselves to be left behind while that's happening. We don't see equality as our own oppression. We don't see women advancing as a negative about us, but we look at the way the system is also harming us, particularly as men, and we say we need to call attention to this as well. That's the difference between the conversations that can happen on this podcast with four men as opposed to other podcasts that have four men.
Jamal, you see how much better you sound when you got chapstick? You see how the words just flow, just a river of complexity and coherence.
A river of complexity.
Just when you got the butter.
Listen. Let's just acknowledge that you might be the most moisturized one on here, X. But we're not gonna continue to you ain't gonna keep throwing these shots, okay?
Where my boys?
Hey, just because you skinny dip and shea butter, you feel me? We out here trying to get there, brother.
Shea butter from a brother in Garfield Park. I got TGIN oils from Donaldson.
After I saw y'all, now listen, because I was like level 1, like I'm level 2. Level 1 is like, okay, you don't stink. Level 2 is you smell good, but it don't last. Right. But goddamn it, he was like, man, look, and listen, this is a serious moment. This is after X.
Hey, see what happened? God
you
don't
removed
like
him?
ugly.
You removed him.
Right, that's what why
he knew what was about to happen. He's like, I know this story.
Dion, we've been telling him about that track phone. We've been telling him that Black Lives Matter, but black phone companies might not be the best. That Obama phone that he got at Cricket Wireless in 2008 is not it.
Got to woke up my daughter.
but yo, okay, he about to come back in and chat. We're gonna let him say his thing. I know we coming up on time. I got one more question. Come on, Dion, we'll bring it on in here. Get on in here. Look at him, frozen. He came in frozen. Well, I thought you need to let it go. Let it go.
I'm not letting it go. No, hell no. And every time I get kicked out, you always try to crack a joke about my financial representation. God damn that. I'm gonna finish my story, fucking bully. Okay. Now, like I was saying, okay, it's a serious moment. God damn it, X just got back. We in here having our serious, conversation. And god damn it, I was like, he smells good. And I was like, you know what? Shit. You know what I mean? So listen, I'm gonna be honest. I done bought a couple shea butter kits at the crib since then, okay? I've been smelling pretty goddamn good, okay? So Jamal, I'm sorry, he right. That's why we laughing.
Yo, if y'all saw my moisturizing game is just crazy, right? The skincare game, the hyaluronic acids, all of that kind of stuff, the morning routine, the toners, all of that. Like this right here, this is gonna be me at 65. But also the scent game. I could put y'all up on some game on some dope scents. Just
I got a couple.
No one remembers them though.
Hey, whoa, hold up. I'm not Jamal. You go low, I take it to the floor. Okay.
I go lower.
Hey, we are brothers. I almost said your mama. Like I ain't know what to do. I got scared. Okay, if you know somebody feel attacked when they say your mama, that's it.
I
Like,
know.
they don't
I know.
got
I
nothing.
know. And on that note,
Flip.
and on that note, one last question with these last couple minutes, y'all.
Talk to me.
So we've been talking about this idea of protection and men protecting and securitizing spaces. I was thinking in my head when y'all was talking about, head on a swivel. Like me and my oldest brother, I maintain a consistent submission basically to my oldest brother because he's an ex-cop and all this sort of a thing. When he goes into a room, there's no way he's sitting with his back facing the door. There's no way. And he and I just, we're at a point now where I'm just not going to argue about it. I'm just going to always take the other seat because he used to bench press 400 pounds. And I'm not doing it. But when two men who both are feeling and experiencing that pressure are now in the same space, you end up jockeying for the role, even if there's no one there to protect. Right? Now, that's it. That's one point. The second point, I want to hear what y'all think about this. When I was in Palestine, man, like I truly didn't feel the responsibility to perform. Even though we were in constant spaces where things were unsafe, I didn't feel the obligation to perform. Now, there were multiple moments from the bus to before that, to when we saw the kids running down the street getting chased by the Israeli Defense Forces, to walking through the refugee camps. And all. There were many moments where the question of security, presence, and with the many, many women that were on the trip, where that could have been a thing, but I didn't feel any of it as obligation. And that's the thing that I'm curious about, because there's a difference. I actually felt honored. I actually felt happy to do this, like play this role. I didn't feel any stares of expectation. I didn't feel any shame if it wasn't done. I was carrying, like, I don't have to carry luggage. I was like, you want me to take your bags, ma'am? Like, I was just so excited to give. And I got back to the US and I immediately didn't feel that as much anymore. And I was like, what was it about either this area I was in, the region, or what was it about the particular women and men that were put together on this trip? There were almost 30 of us. Yeah. Or what was it? What the heck was it? Because I'm constantly talking about gender equity and I very rarely ever feel the benefits of it personally for me as a man. But the reality is I spent 2 straight weeks performing all the roles and never feeling like it was a performance.
Can I go, Jamal, real quick, 2 things, because it's funny, even in your examples, it was the 2 things that I was going to speak on. The first thing is when you spoke about the place you were in. And I think that, that's important, because what we've noticed with where we are, especially this group, us 4, we notice environment and we feel expectation. And when you go to another place where the expectation is different, you feel the cultural difference as opposed to it being told to you. And so you immediately are disarmed out of not knowing. It's not because you said, hey, I'm putting my things down. It's like, no, you're thrust into a place that you're not acclimated. You know what I mean? And you're so used to performing, you like, okay. And then, the more you're into it, this foreign place, you're accepting of it. But the second thing is when you talked about the other leaders, because as you were talking, again, I thought about us 4. And when it's a certain group of people or a certain feeling and a certain agreement and a certain acknowledgement that you make to yourself about where you are and who you're with, you disarm yourself from having to, because with you all, I don't feel like I have to.
Yeah.
With you all, I'm here. You know what I mean? And I don't tell myself, I need to talk. What am I doing? You know what I mean? I need to carry this. And those are 2 strong examples and like things that, like, immediately as you were saying it, it's like understanding like being somewhere that you're not used to physically is important, and like what are the cultural and societal norms wherever you are. And then also who that second thing is who you're with, and how your body and your mind and your heart accepts where you are, and seeing how you interact with that setting differently when you disarm those 3 things.
I want to add on to that, because I think another part of this is that the performance wasn't tied to your worth.
Right.
Your worth was already acknowledged, recognized, appreciated, celebrated by being a part of that group. And I think when you, and I think all of us, we're all a little defiant. Just by nature, we're defiant people. So when something, if we are being told we have to prove something about ourselves, to prove our worth, to prove that we belong, we're like, nah, I'm not doing that.
Nah, yeah, I resist that immediately.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
It's just a natural reaction from all of us, and that's why we are who we are. So when it's not tied to your worth, when your worth is already acknowledged and appreciated, you are free to do those things that are going to bring joy to other people, as opposed to being forced to do the things that are expected of you from other people.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I think just to echo, I mean, pretty much what y'all saying is what it is. Like, there's a different expectation here. There's a burden we have. Like, we know, especially as men who are aware of the struggles and the inequities, we want to participate and help making things better. And that comes around, that comes with a hyper awareness of everything. It's a certain level of sensitivity you have to have, especially when you enter the world of academia. You begin to study these things, and you are aware of even the so-called gender wars and things like that. But when you are able to go to a place, even if it's not for a typical like vacation in a sense, it's still I'm away from that, and now I want to do this not because somebody's telling me or because I have to act a certain way just to probably survive. I'm doing it because I feel that way. And I think that's the experience a lot of folks have when they even migrate to this country, because you're able to leave something and present yourself now in a completely different way. And I think too, something that I even wanted to add to this is I think a lot of the times the violence that we even see, like the genderized violence that we see men participate in, is oftentimes because of, like you said, the expectation of like I'm supposed to be that person. When I think of how like the students I used to teach who were wanting to wanted to go to the military because of the hyper nationalism, not because of like they wanted to take a school or something like that. It was because they had an undying love for this country. So like when you pair patriarchy with nationalism and it's unchecked, like you're willing to die for that thing. You know what I'm saying? And you don't see any other way around it. It's crazy because the vast majority of men and women, we have resolved to we want a peaceful world. We see examples of us working together in community for a peaceful world, but the world leaders have not done that. And it's crazy because the people that we deem as the most professional or our world leaders, the ones that we trust with our very well being, oftentimes have the least capacity to negotiate anything peaceful. Because when I make the remark that most of the violence is perpetuated by us, it's with also saying that most vast majority of men do not even want to actively participate in. And I think somebody asked a question earlier was like, well, why do you think that is? And it's loaded. I think we've unpacked that a lot, but a lot of it is the expectation. And it's the idea that if I was to truly express how I feel, then it would make me less than the man that I'm trying to portray myself as. So what do? I put on that role, and every day is Halloween.
Yeah. Yeah. It's a tough question, man. I just want to just vulnerably say, man, this was this was a doozy of a question that I proposed to y'all. It's a very I mean, we're all four leaders of different organizations and movement type ideologies and such. So there's a lot of risk in elevating this question of I started off with the question of why don't we see, and do you even expect that men will be released as hostages in the Israel-Hamas war? And knowing that they're not part of the negotiation, and that much of the media, language is just it doesn't even include it. It's just and I'm not saying it's a bad thing. I'm saying it's a incomplete thing to just say women and children are being hurt, and it's a dangerous thing to raise this, because I know that there are some men who say, Xavier, you sound weak, you sound stupid. Like, what do you mean? Would you want your wife to die? Like, you wouldn't protect your home? I know there's a lot of guys who probably would listen to what we are talking about right now and be like, man, these are some simps. These are some ridiculously soft, weak men. And I want to thank you all for being willing to lean into this conversation despite that. And also, given that it's a challenging thing to talk about. I do hope that some men make it out. I'm just going to say that. for my sake as well, just to have a little bit of hope that perhaps our bodies aren't as expendable as I think they often can be seen as, and to maybe have a precedent set that is not just about minors and women when it comes to the reality of who's affected by war. Notwithstanding the different ways that people experience different violences. For me growing up, it was very much, and I think for y'all as well, there's a lot of sexual violence, particularly that women had to be constantly like head on a swivel about, just like we were talking about with like security and rooms and all, like they head on a swivel because men are out here being predators. And I'm glad that we were able to insert this part of the conversation around our heads on a swivel. And instead of replacing the conversation, our goal today was to expand it and to be comprehensive about that, but to do that from a first person narrative. I also want to just acknowledge that a lot of what as I'm reflecting on what we were talking about, it very much is an American heteronormative perspective as well. So if there are queer men who watch this, some of this stuff might not sound as germane. It may, but as a heterosexual man growing up in Chicago who's Black, I definitely have felt the expectation of physical performance, in the public eye. But also that there are limitations to having 4 heterosexual men having this conversation about men. And again, we speak using I statements, and that's not to override others, but it's also just to say we can't include people that we are not when we're using our own narratives and testimonies about our own lives. And I don't think we should. There should be space, and people should go listen to those people directly versus asking us to speak on their behalf. Cool.
Absolutely.
All right, gents. Love y'all. Take the day.
All right, man. Love y'all too. Be safe, man.
Peace.
All right.